Francine is on the way and is a threat to the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast. Let's talk about it in this Sunday afternoon update here on the Texas Weather Center. All right, good afternoon. I'm Texas Storm Chasers Bully-in-Chief David Reimer. It is Sunday, the 8th of September, 2024, about 2 p.m. Central Time. We have beautiful weather ongoing across the state. First fall weekend, really, we've had. A little warm this afternoon, but with the dry air mass in place, we're going to cool off pretty quickly again after sunset, and that will allow for another morning of 50s and 60s, maybe a few 40s sneaking in. It is going to be another beautiful fall-like night, but we've got tropical mischief to discuss. Let's get to it. This is the latest National Hurricane Center outlook, per se, for Invest 90L, which, for all intent and purposes, is going to be Francine. At this point, nearly a 100% chance that this will become a tropical storm over the next 24 to 36 hours, and as such, it looks likely we're going to have advisories begin later this afternoon with the issuance of tropical storm watches for portions of the Texas Gulf Coast. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what that means. Right now, the hurricane hunters are heading out on their first mission on this system. They're heading down to the Bay of Campeache, southwestern Gulf of Mexico, where this system is located. Right now, we have a large area of showers and thunderstorms with an area of low pressure. What they're going to go in and determine is this become a tropical cyclone yet, which requires a pretty well-defined inner core. And if it is, we'll likely have this become either a tropical depression if maximum sustained winds are found to be below 40 miles an hour. If they're above 40, it'll automatically become a tropical storm and be named Francine. Regardless of what they call a potential tropical cyclone, tropical depression, number, whatever, I don't give a flippity-boppity-boo, because it's likely going to be Francine, so we're just going to go ahead and call it probable Francine, because I can. It's my channel. So, yeah. As we take a look at the forecast rain totals, this is what it looks like right now. And we're going to take a look at the track guidance in just a second. But I want to emphasize this is not going to impact most of the state. In fact, at least 80% of the state's probably not going to see a darn thing from this. And depending on the track guidance, if this shifts a little further east, this will be a coastal event almost completely across the state, with inland impacts being quite limited because, well, one, we have a drier air mass in place, and two, if the system goes further east, we're going to be on the west side, or the cleaner side, of the tropical cyclone. But regardless, someone is going to get probably, 5 to 10 plus inches of rain out of this. If it tracks close enough to the Texas Gulf Coast, this could bring heavy rain and potentially some flooding to the Rio Grande Valley, the coastal bend, the coastal plains, the middle upper Texas Gulf Coast, the Golden Triangle, southeast Texas. But as you can see based on this right now, it looks like it's going to move inland and impact areas inland up into Louisiana, eastern Arkansas, Mississippi, versus moving inland further west along the Texas coast and giving us all the rain. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but yeah, someone's going to get a lot of rain out of this. Now, let's take a look at the latest tropical guidance plots. Now, what you're looking at here are purely, it doesn't take into account the impacts. This is purely putting a pin on a map and saying, where is the center of this going from here? And from here, this is where a lot of the tropical models pinpoint. Notice this is a complicated forecast because this is actually going to be moving northwest over the next day or two, approaching the Rio Grande Valley, lower Texas Gulf Coast, and then turning northeast. When that turn north and northeast occurs is going to dictate how close this gets to the Texas Gulf Coast and its eventual landfall point. Not shown here are the global forecast system, the American weather model, longer range weather model, and the European weather model. Both of them this morning have landfall across southern Louisiana. They're taking the eastern course. But because we don't have a well-defined system just yet, I'm hesitant to buy into that completely. There's going to be shifts. There's going to be wobbles west, wobbles east. But the problem is, In our case, if this ends up right in the Texas Gulf Coast or close enough to the coast as it's moving northeast, the whole Texas Gulf Coast is going to have potential impacts from, tropical storm force winds, some heavy rain, probably some increased surf and coastal flooding. Once the system makes it north of your relative location, you're going to switch to offshore winds, and that's going to push all the water off the coast. We may have some low water issues in some of the bays, Galveston Bay, etc. So where this makes landfall in about, well, at this point, probably 3, maybe 4 days, is going to dictate who gets what. And at this point, we're dealing with still a theoretical system that is likely to become at least Tropical Storm Francine. Unfortunately, it does appear conditions could allow for a fairly rapid bout of intensification once the system becomes organized. Over the next day or two, we're probably not going to see this thing do all that much. It'll probably become a tropical depression or tropical storm. It'll probably take its time organizing, but once it gets organized, the potential exists that it could begin to rapidly intensify or intensify more quickly, which could allow it to become a hurricane before it makes landfall, on Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe even early Thursday, somewhere on the Texas, Louisiana Gulf Coast. If this takes a further west track, the rate of intensification would probably be a bit slower, fortunately, because drier air and less time over the Gulf. That would also move landfall up a couple days. If this takes a further east course, it'll have more time over the Gulf, it'll have less influence from dry air, and conditions could be more favorable for significant intensification, including up into a hurricane before landfall, especially if this kind of moves towards, the Sabine Pass or even further east into southern Louisiana. I do expect we're going to have advisories issued from the National Hurricane Center here in the next few hours. I wouldn't be shocked if they start here at 4 p.m. They may wait until about 10 p.m. though, and with that, we're probably going to see tropical storm watches issued for parts of the lower and middle Texas Gulf Coast, simply because the possibility of sustained winds over 40 miles an hour as the system approaches the coast. Later on tonight or tomorrow, we may see tropical storm/hurricane watches issued for portions of the upper Texas Gulf Coast and Louisiana Gulf Coast. Perhaps. Again, it depends where the track guidance is indicating. If it keeps shifting east, this is going to be less of a Texas issue and more of a Louisiana issue. So, with that being said, yeah, we're going to be making more of these videos later today. I'm keeping this one on the shorter side just because of the fact we're probably going to be doing another one of these in 3 hours if they issue an advisory here by 4 p.m. If not, we'll have another update here about 8 to 9 p.m., maybe a little closer to 10. But again, this is not going to be an issue for most of Texas. Those of you on the Texas Gulf Coast, Louisiana, we do want you to keep an eye on the forecast, check back, and be sure you're keeping up to date with your local weather sources. Y'all have a great afternoon. We'll come back after the Cowboys game. Keep you updated.